May 15, 2013, Courtroom 4B, Philadelphia County Courthouse. 12-year-old Maya Williams sat in the gallery, watching her mother stand before Judge Marcus Jefferson. Teresa Williams wore the only professional outfit she owned, a dated blazer and skirt borrowed from her sister. She stood with dignity despite the circumstances, despite the charges that made no sense, despite knowing this system was designed to destroy people who looked like her. Ms. Williams, Judge Jefferson's voice carried the particular condescension of a man who'd spent 40 years on the bench crushing people beneath the weight of his power. You've been found guilty of possession with intent to distribute. Despite your claims of innocence, the evidence is clear. The evidence. Maya had heard about it during the trial. A traffic stop that turned into a car search, drugs found in the trunk, her mother's insistence that she'd never seen those drugs before, that someone must have planted them. The prosecutor, District Attorney Robert Chen, had painted Teresa as a drug dealer masquerading as a struggling single mother. He'd presented witnesses, two men Maya had never seen before, who testified they'd bought drugs from Teresa. He'd shown financial records claiming Teresa had unexplained income. All of it was lies. Maya knew because she lived with her mother. She saw how Teresa worked 2 jobs, morning shift at the hospital cafeteria, evening shift cleaning offices, just to keep their small apartment. She saw her mother's exhaustion, her determination to provide for Maya, her absolute refusal to even let Maya hang around kids who got in trouble. But none of that mattered to Judge Jefferson or D.A. Chen. The court finds that you represent a danger to the community, Jefferson continued. Your actions have contributed to the drug epidemic destroying neighborhoods. You've shown no remorse, no accountability. Teresa's lawyer, an overworked public defender who'd met with them twice, stood silently. He'd advised Teresa to take a plea deal. The evidence is bad, he'd said. Take 5 years instead of risking 10. Teresa had refused. I didn't do this. I won't say I did. That refusal was about to cost her everything. I hereby sentence you to 8 years in state prison, Jefferson declared. Bailiff, remand the defendant into custody. Maya's scream shattered the courtroom's procedural calm. No, she didn't do it. Mom! Teresa turned, tears streaming down her face. Maya, baby, listen to me! The bailiff grabbed Teresa's arm, began handcuffing her. I didn't do this, Teresa called out as they pulled her toward the side door. Maya, you know I didn't do this. You know who I am. That's enough. Jefferson banged his gavel. Remove the defendant. Maya tried to climb over the gallery railing. Her Aunt Denise grabbed her, held her back while Maya fought and sobbed. Mom! Mom, don't leave me! Teresa was dragged through the door, still looking back at her daughter, mouthing words Maya couldn't hear over her own screaming. The courtroom cleared. Judge Jefferson moved on to his next case as if he hadn't just destroyed a family. D.A. Chen packed his briefcase, satisfied with another conviction that would look good on his record. And Maya Williams sat in the empty gallery with her aunt, 12 years old, her world ending, making a promise that would define the next decade of her life. I'm going to prove she's innocent, Maya whispered through tears. And I'm going to destroy everyone who did this to her. Aunt Denise, heartbroken but practical, tried to comfort her. Baby, the system doesn't work for people like us. Sometimes all we can do is survive it. Maya looked at her aunt with an expression far too adult for a 12-year-old. I'm not going to survive it. I'm going to break it. The next 3 months were hell. Maya moved in with Aunt Denise in a smaller apartment across town. New school, new neighborhood, kids who whispered about the girl whose mom's in prison for drugs. Maya visited her mother every Saturday at the women's correctional facility 2 hours away. Teresa tried to stay strong for her daughter, but prison was destroying her. The guards were cruel, the other inmates were hardened, and Teresa, gentle, religious Teresa who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, was drowning. How's school? Teresa would ask through the plexiglass divider, trying to pretend this was normal. Good, Maya would lie. School wasn't good. School was torture, but she wouldn't burden her mother with that. What Maya didn't tell her mother, she was reading. Everything. Law books from the library, court procedures, criminal justice, wrongful convictions, the Innocence Project, every case of planted evidence she could find. At 12 years old, Maya Williams was teaching herself how the legal system worked so she could tear it apart. She learned about Brady violations, when prosecutors hide evidence that could help the defense. She learned about coerced testimony, about systemic racism in sentencing, about judges who saw black defendants as guilty before trial even started. She learned the name Marcus Jefferson appeared in multiple appeals for bias and misconduct, but the Judicial Review Board always cleared him. She learned Robert Chen had one of the highest conviction rates in the state, and that his success was built on aggressive prosecution of poor black defendants. By age 14, Maya knew more about criminal procedure than most college students. By 16, she was taking community college classes while still in high school, focused entirely on pre-law. Teachers noticed. "You're brilliant, Maya, but you're so angry. Have you thought about therapy?" Maya had thought about therapy. She'd decided knowledge was better than comfort. Understanding the system was better than healing from what it had done. Her mother served her time. 8 years turned into 6 with good behavior. Maya visited every single Saturday for 6 years, watching her mother age decades in that place, watching her spirit break and rebuild and break again. On visiting day number 312, Maya was 18. She'd just received her acceptance letter to Howard University, full scholarship, pre-law program. "Mom, I got in." Howard Teresa's face lit up, the first real smile Maya had seen in years. "Baby, that's amazing. That's everything. I'm going to be a lawyer." Maya leaned close to the divider, voice low. "I'm going to prove you're innocent. I'm going to find out who planted those drugs and why, and I'm going to make everyone who did this pay for it." Teresa's smile faded. "Maya, you need to let this go. Build a life, not a revenge plot." "It's not revenge. It's justice." Maya's eyes were hard. "They stole 6 years of your life and 12 years of mine. They need to answer for that. The judge, the prosecutor, they're powerful people. You can't fight them. Watch me." Maya graduated valedictorian from her high school. Gave a speech about justice being delayed but not denied, about systems that needed dismantling, about young people who would rebuild what their parents' generation couldn't fix. Judge Marcus Jefferson was in the audience. He attended local graduations as a community service gesture, sitting in the front row in his expensive suit, representing the law. He had no idea the 18-year-old girl on stage talking about justice reform was the same 12-year-old who'd screamed in his courtroom 6 years ago. He had no memory of Teresa Williams at all. She was case number 47,392 in a career of thousands. Just another drug dealer put away, another conviction counted, another day's work. But Maya remembered everything, every word he'd said, every dismissive gesture, the way he'd called her mother a danger to the community based on lies. She looked directly at him during her speech, though he didn't recognize her. "To those who use power to crush the powerless," she said, "your day of reckoning is coming. Justice has a long memory, and so do I." The audience applauded, thinking it was inspirational rhetoric. Marcus Jefferson clapped along, never imagining those words were directed at him. Maya left for Howard University that fall. 4 years of undergraduate, 3 years of law school, top of her class, editor of Law Review, internships at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the Innocence Project, then Harvard Law for her master's degree, then a position as assistant U.S. attorney in Philadelphia. 10 years after watching her mother dragged away in handcuffs, Maya Williams returned to Philadelphia, not as a victim, as a federal prosecutor with the authority to investigate judicial misconduct and prosecutorial corruption. She requested assignment to the Public Corruption Unit, got it, started reviewing cases in Philadelphia County, and one name kept appearing in cases involving wrongful convictions, planted evidence, and constitutional violations: Judge Marcus Jefferson. Maya built her case slowly, meticulously. She interviewed defendants Jefferson had sentenced. She examined prosecution patterns in D.A. Chen's cases. She found witnesses who'd been coerced, evidence that had been suppressed, 18 months of painstaking investigation. And then, in November 2023, 10 years and 6 months after that terrible day in courtroom 4B, Maya Williams filed federal charges: conspiracy to violate civil rights, fabrication of evidence, judicial misconduct, prosecutorial fraud, named defendants, Judge Marcus Jefferson and District Attorney Robert Chen. Attached evidence, 400 pages documenting 2 decades of systematic corruption. And buried in the case file, listed as Exhibit A, wrongful conviction requiring immediate exoneration. Commonwealth vs. to Teresa Williams, case number 47392. The 12-year-old girl who'd screamed in that courtroom was gone. In her place stood a federal prosecutor who'd spent a decade preparing for this moment. And Marcus Jefferson had no idea his worst nightmare was about to walk into his courtroom. November 2023, Federal Building, Philadelphia. Maya Williams sat in her office reviewing the case files one more time before filing charges. 10 years of preparation, 18 months of active investigation, every piece of evidence triple-checked, every witness statement verified. She wasn't just building a case against Marcus Jefferson and Robert Chen. She was building a case that would survive every appeal, every motion to dismiss, every desperate legal maneuver corrupt officials could throw at it. Because this wasn't just about her mother. Maya's investigation had uncovered something massive, a systematic pattern of misconduct spanning 2 decades. Jefferson and Chen had been planting evidence, coercing witnesses, and railroading defendants, almost exclusively black and brown people, for years. Teresa Williams was one of 47 victims Maya had identified. 47 people serving time for crimes they didn't commit. 47 families destroyed by a judge and prosecutor who treated convictions like a game score. Maya's supervisor, Deputy U.S. Attorney James Harrison, knocked on her door. "You ready for this?" "I've been ready for 10 years. James had known about Maya's personal connection to the case from the beginning. She'd disclosed it immediately upon assignment, expecting to be recused. Instead, James had said, "Sometimes the people closest to injustice are the most motivated to correct it. Just make sure the case is airtight." The case was airtight. Jefferson has powerful friends, James warned. Politicians. Other judges. The moment you file, they'll come after you hard. Let them. Maya closed the file. "Everything I found is documented and corroborated. They can come after me all they want. The evidence speaks for itself." She filed the federal charges at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m., it was breaking news. Federal prosecutors charged Philadelphia judge and DA with civil rights violations and evidence fabrication. By noon, Marcus Jefferson's lawyer was holding a press conference, calling the charges politically motivated and an attack on law enforcement. By 2 p.m., Robert Chen held his own press conference, claiming he was a victim of overzealous federal prosecutors trying to undermine local justice. Neither of them knew yet who was leading the prosecution. That revelation came at the initial hearing. Federal courtroom, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, 3 weeks later. Marcus Jefferson walked in wearing an expensive suit surrounded by his legal team. At 72, he'd been a judge for 40 years and believed himself untouchable. He'd beaten misconduct allegations before. He'd weather this storm, too. Robert Chen arrived separately, equally confident. His political connections ran deep. He had senators in his corner. This would blow over. They took their seats at the defense table, whispering with their attorneys, waiting for the federal prosecutor to arrive. The door opened. Maya Williams entered in a sharp black suit carrying 3 thick case files. Marcus Jefferson glanced at her, then away. Just another young prosecutor. He didn't recognize her. Robert Chen noticed her, frowned slightly, something familiar about her, but he couldn't place it. Maya walked to the prosecution table, set down her files, and turned to face the defendants. "Good morning, Your Honor," she addressed Judge Patricia Morrison, who was presiding. "Assistant U.S. Attorney Maya Williams for the government." At the defense table, Robert Chen went still. Williams, that name. "Your Honor," Maya continued, "the government is prepared to present evidence of a decades-long conspiracy to violate the civil rights of defendants in the Philadelphia County court system. The defendants, Judge Marcus Jefferson and District Attorney Robert Chen, systematically fabricated evidence, coerced witness testimony, and suppressed exculpatory evidence in at least 47 cases we've documented so far." Marcus Jefferson was studying Maya now, trying to place her. Young black woman, maybe late 20s, confident, prepared. Why did she seem familiar? Your Honor, if I may, Maya pulled out a specific file. I'd like to begin with Commonwealth Vi. Teresa Williams, case number 47392, decided May 15, 2013. This case exemplifies the pattern of misconduct we'll demonstrate. She projected the case file on the courtroom screen. Teresa Williams was a single mother, working 2 jobs, no prior criminal record. She was stopped on a traffic violation, allegedly failing to signal. The arresting officer, at DA Chen's direction, conducted a search and claimed to find drugs in her trunk. Marcus Jefferson's face went pale. He was starting to remember. Ms. Williams maintained her innocence. She had no history of drug use or dealing. No forensic evidence linked her to the drugs. No fingerprints, no DNA. The prosecution's entire case relied on 2 witnesses who claimed they'd bought drugs from her. Maya advanced the slide, showing photos of the 2 witnesses. Marcus Brown and Timothy Jackson, both had lengthy criminal records. Both were facing serious charges. Both received deals from D.A. Chen in exchange for their testimony against Teresa Williams. Both have since recanted, stating they were coerced by prosecutors and threatened with enhanced sentences if they didn't cooperate. Robert Chen was sweating now. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Teresa Williams was sentenced by Judge Jefferson to 8 years in prison. She served 6. During that time, her 12-year-old daughter was forced into foster care with relatives. The family was destroyed. Maya paused, her voice steady but her eyes burning. That 12-year-old daughter is now a federal prosecutor, and for the past 18 months, I've been investigating how my mother ended up in prison for a crime she didn't commit. The courtroom erupted, reporters typing furiously. Defense attorneys jumping up with objections, Judge Morrison banging her gavel. Marcus Jefferson stared at Maya, recognition finally dawning. The screaming child from his courtroom, the girl he'd dismissed as he sent her mother to prison. She'd come back. Your Honor, Jefferson's attorney was on his feet. The prosecutor has a clear conflict of interest, which was disclosed and approved by the Department of Justice. Maya cut him off coolly. My personal connection to one case doesn't invalidate the 46 other cases of documented misconduct, unless you're suggesting all 47 victims are lying. Judge Morrison reviewed the disclosure documents. The conflict was properly disclosed. Motion denied. Ms. Williams may proceed. For the next hour, Maya systematically presented her evidence, not just her mother's case, but the pattern. 47 cases, 47 wrongful convictions, statistical analysis showing Jefferson sentenced black defendants 30% more harshly than white defendants for identical crimes. Evidence that Chen's office had a policy of offering deals to informants in exchange for testimony, regardless of truthfulness. She showed emails between Chen's office and Jefferson's clerk coordinating on cases before trial. She presented forensic analysis proving evidence had been planted in multiple cases. She played recorded phone calls where witnesses admitted they'd been coerced. The case was devastating, airtight, undeniable. Marcus Jefferson's legendary composure cracked. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently. This wasn't some disgruntled defendant with a vendetta. This was a federal prosecutor who'd built a career preparing to destroy him. Robert Chen looked sick. His political connections wouldn't save him from federal civil rights charges backed by this level of evidence. When Maya finished her presentation, Judge Morrison set bail conditions. Both defendants would surrender their law licenses pending trial. Jefferson would step down from the bench immediately. Chen would be suspended as DA. As the hearing ended, Maya packed her files. Marcus Jefferson approached her, his lawyers trying to stop him. Ms. Williams, his voice was hoarse, I don't remember your mother's case specifically. I've presided over thousands. That's the problem, Maya interrupted, her voice ice. My mother wasn't a case number. She was a human being, a mother. And you destroyed her based on fabricated evidence without a second thought, because to you, she was just another black woman who probably deserved prison anyway. I wasn't. You were. You are. And now you're going to answer for it. Maya picked up her briefcase. You taught me something that day in your courtroom, Judge Jefferson. You taught me that the system doesn't protect people like my mother. So I spent 10 years learning how to use that same system to protect her. To protect all the people you and Chen crushed under the weight of your power. She started to walk away, then paused. By the way, my mother is being released tomorrow. Emergency exoneration based on the evidence I've compiled. She'll walk out of that prison after serving 6 years for a crime she didn't commit, and you'll walk into one for the crimes you did commit. I thought you'd like to know. Marcus Jefferson stood frozen as Maya left the courtroom. The 12-year-old girl who'd screamed in his courtroom was gone. In her place stood the federal prosecutor who'd spent a decade preparing to end his career. And she was just getting started. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Maya, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. "Ms. Williams, how does it feel to prosecute the judge who wrongfully convicted your mother?" Maya stopped, faced the cameras. This was part of the plan too, public pressure to ensure justice wouldn't be quietly swept away. It feels like a decade of preparation paying off, but this case isn't about my feelings. It's about the 47 documented victims of systematic corruption. It's about a judge and prosecutor who treated people's lives as disposable. And it's about proving that power doesn't make you untouchable. It just means you fall harder when justice catches up. What do you say to critics who claim you're biased? I say bias would be pursuing this without evidence. I have 400 pages of documented proof. I have witness statements, forensic analysis, statistical data, and recorded admissions. That's not bias. That's thorough prosecution. What's next for your mother? For the first time, Maya's professional facade cracked slightly. Tomorrow morning, my mother walks out of prison after 6 years of wrongful incarceration. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll begin the process of getting her record expunged and pursuing compensation. And then we'll work on the other 46 victims who deserve the same. She walked to her car, ignoring the shouted questions that followed. Inside, alone, Maya allowed herself one moment of emotion. 10 years. 10 years of anger channeled into education, preparation, investigation. Tomorrow, her mother would be free. But the trial hadn't even started yet. The real reckoning was still to come. December 10th, 2023, Pennsylvania Women's Correctional Facility. Maya stood outside the prison gates at dawn, waiting. The same gates she'd walked through every Saturday for 6 years, watching her mother deteriorate behind plexiglass dividers. Today, Teresa Williams was walking out. The gate opened. Teresa emerged in civilian clothes, jeans and a sweater Maya had sent, blinking in the morning sun like someone emerging from a cave. She was 46 but looked 60. Prison had aged her, hardened her, stolen years she'd never get back. She saw Maya and broke down. They held each other in the parking lot, both crying, neither speaking. What could you say after 6 years stolen? After childhood trauma? After a decade spent fighting for this moment? "You did it," Teresa finally whispered. "Baby, you actually did it. I promised you I would." Maya pulled back, wiping her mother's tears. "I promised that day in the courtroom. Remember? You were 12 years old. I didn't think—" Teresa's voice broke. "I didn't want you to waste your life on revenge. It wasn't revenge. It was justice." Maya guided her mother to the car. "And it's not just about you. 46 other people are getting the same exoneration. We're dismantling the entire corrupt system that destroyed you." Teresa was silent during the drive back to Philadelphia. She stared out the window at a world that had moved on without her. 6 years gone, her daughter grown, her life a stranger. "What happens now?" Teresa asked quietly. "Now we go home. Tomorrow we start the compensation claim process, and in 3 weeks the trial begins." Maya glanced at her mother. "You don't have to be there. I can do this without you. I'll be there." Teresa's voice was steel. "I want to look at them. I want them to see what they did." The trial of Marcus Jefferson and Robert Chen began on January 8, 2024, in federal court. The prosecution table, Maya Williams and her team of 3 assistant prosecutors. The defense table, 2 separate legal teams representing Jefferson and Chen, each with 5 lawyers. Expensive, desperate. The gallery, packed with journalists, victims' families, and Teresa Williams sitting in the front row, the same position her daughter had occupied 10 years ago. Marcus Jefferson looked smaller than he had on the bench, diminished, the weight of accountability visible in his posture. Robert Chen looked angry, defiant, still believing his connections would save him. Maya's opening statement was surgical. For 20 years, these men operated as judge and prosecutor in Philadelphia County. For 20 years, they systematically violated the constitutional rights of defendants, almost exclusively black and brown defendants. They planted evidence. They coerced witnesses. They suppressed evidence of innocence. They treated people's lives as statistics in their conviction records. She pulled up a slide showing all 47 victims' photos. These are the faces of their crimes. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, people with jobs, families, futures, people who trusted that the justice system would protect them. Instead, these two men used that system as a weapon. Over 3 weeks, Maya presented her case. Expert witnesses testified about statistical patterns showing racial bias. Former defendants testified about coerced confessions. Forensic experts proved evidence had been planted. Whistleblowers from the DA's office revealed the pressure to secure convictions regardless of guilt. The defense strategy collapsed quickly. Jefferson's lawyers argued he was just following standard procedures. But Maya had found dozens of cases where he deviated from procedure to harm defendants. Chen's lawyers claimed prosecutorial discretion, but the emails and recordings proved deliberate fabrication, not discretion. The most devastating testimony came from Marcus Brown and Timothy Jackson, the two witnesses who'd lied about buying drugs from Teresa Williams. D.A. Chen told me if I didn't testify against Teresa Williams, I'd get 20 years for my charges, Marcus Brown testified. I'd never met that woman in my life. But I was scared. So I lied. Timothy Jackson confirmed the same. They showed me a photo, told me what to say, and promised me probation if I cooperated. I destroyed an innocent woman's life to save my own. Maya questioned them both. Why come forward now? Because I've been living with it for 10 years, Marcus Brown said, voice shaking. Knowing I sent an innocent woman to prison, when I heard you were investigating, I had to tell the truth, even if it means I go back to jail. Maya turned to the jury. That's accountability. That's what it looks like when someone admits wrongdoing. Watch the defendants. You won't see it from them. She was right. Jefferson and Chen showed no remorse. Their defenses blamed subordinates, claimed isolated incidents, argued they'd just been aggressive in pursuing justice. But the jury saw through it. They saw the pattern. They saw the racial disparity. They saw the arrogance of two men who'd never been held accountable. Teresa Williams testified on day 18. Maya had prepared her, but nothing could really prepare a woman to face the judge who'd sent her to prison. Ms. Williams, Maya asked gently, describe the day you were arrested. Teresa recounted the traffic stop, the search, the shock of being arrested for drugs she'd never seen. I told them it wasn't mine. I begged them to test it for fingerprints. They didn't care. I wasn't a person to them. I was just another black woman who must be guilty of something. She described prison, the violence, the degradation, missing her daughter's entire adolescence. I missed her first date, her driver's license, her high school graduation, her college acceptance, all because Judge Jefferson believed lies and D.A. Chen manufactured evidence. Maya showed the jury Teresa's prison records, exemplary behavior, multiple commendations, clear evidence of someone who didn't belong there. What would you say to the defendants now? Maya asked. Teresa looked directly at Marcus Jefferson. I'd say you stole 6 years of my life. You traumatized my child. You destroyed my family. And you did it casually, without a thought, because you saw me as disposable. I hope you understand now what you did. And I hope you spend every day in prison thinking about the 47 families you destroyed. Jefferson looked away. Chen stared at his hands. The defense had no effective cross-examination. What could they say? The evidence was overwhelming. Closing arguments took 1 day. Maya was brief. The defendants will tell you they were just doing their jobs. But their job wasn't to secure convictions at any cost. Their job was to seek truth and justice. They failed. They didn't just fail. They actively corrupted the system they were sworn to uphold. And they need to answer for that. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts, both defendants, every charge. Marcus Jefferson's face went gray. Robert Chen closed his eyes. Maya felt Teresa's hand grip hers from the gallery. 10 years. It had taken 10 years, but they'd won. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Marcus Jefferson, 12 years federal prison for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. His judicial pension was revoked, his law license permanently suspended. Robert Chen, 15 years federal prison for the same charges, plus additional counts of evidence fabrication and witness coercion. Before they were taken away, Judge Morrison allowed victim impact statements. Teresa spoke first. "You thought I was powerless. You thought my daughter was just a child who'd forget. You were wrong. She spent 10 years becoming powerful enough to hold you accountable. That's what you taught her, that power matters, so she became powerful. And she used it for justice, not cruelty. That's the difference between her and you." 17 other victims spoke. Stories of lost years, broken families, trauma that would never fully heal. Marcus Jefferson was given a chance to speak. He stood facing the victims. "I believed I was serving justice. I see now I was serving my own ego, my conviction rate, my reputation. I destroyed lives to build my legacy. I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I know that's not enough. Nothing I say can undo the harm, but I'm truly, deeply sorry." Robert Chen declined to speak. Even facing 12 years in prison, he couldn't admit wrongdoing. As they were led away in handcuffs, Maya felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion, and the weight of understanding how much work remained, because 47 people were being exonerated, but the system that enabled Jefferson and Chen was still intact. Other judges, other prosecutors could still abuse power if no one held them accountable. Maya met with reporters outside the courthouse. "This verdict is important, but it's not enough. We need systematic reform, independent oversight of prosecutors, better mechanisms for reporting judicial misconduct. We need to dismantle the structures that allowed 2 men to destroy dozens of lives over 20 years." "Will you continue in prosecution?" a reporter asked. "Yes, because the system needs people who understand how it fails, who've seen its cruelty firsthand, who won't forget that every case file represents a human life." She found her mother waiting by her car. Teresa looked lighter somehow, despite the years she'd never recover. "Thank you," Teresa said simply. "You don't have to thank me. You should never have needed me to do this. But I did need you, and you were there." Teresa hugged her daughter. That 12-year-old girl in the courtroom, she made a promise, and the woman she became kept it. "I'm so proud of who you are, Maya." They drove home together, to the small apartment Maya had rented for them both, because Teresa's old place had been lost years ago, and she needed time to rebuild. That evening, Maya received an email from the Department of Justice. Based on her work in the Jefferson Chen case, Philadelphia was implementing mandatory review of all convictions from the past 20 years. 5 other cities were launching similar investigations. Systematic reform, beginning because one 12-year-old girl refused to accept injustice. Maya forwarded the email to her mother, then opened her laptop. She had 46 other families to help, compensation claims to file, expungement proceedings to initiate. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished as long as people like Jefferson and Chen existed in positions of power. But tonight, justice had been served. Teresa Williams was free. 2 corrupt officials were in prison, and the system was finally being forced to examine its own cruelty. Maya looked at the photo on her desk, 12-year-old her with her mother before everything fell apart. That little girl had promised to destroy everyone who hurt her mother. The promise had been kept. Sometimes justice takes a decade. Sometimes it requires a child growing into a weapon sharp enough to pierce through corruption. Sometimes the system only changes when someone who understands its cruelty completely refuses to accept it. Maya Williams had been that someone, and she was just getting started.